Hey guys, welcome back. This is going to be yet another one of those unusual and unexpected videos. So at the time of the filming of this, I came across a tweet that I thought was pretty interesting. I thought it might be fun to talk about this and sort of point a couple things out to you guys. So we'll just jump straight into it here. You can see my face looks pretty big compared to this page. And in fact, I probably should actually make this a little bit bigger so you can see what in the world's going on. There you go. And that way we can probably read this almost no matter what kind of device you're on. This comes from Jacob Turner, who talks about how Major League Baseball players travel more than 40,000 air miles in a single season. And so you can imagine that there's nothing but hotel after hotel after hotel, since every series lasts only 3 games. These days, teams fly in chartered planes or team-owned planes. There's actually only one team-owned plane left, which is with the Tigers. Of course, it doesn't really make much sense to actually own the plane. There's another economic commentary about that. And then you go through different hotels. These days, it's all first-class hotels with certain stipulations per what the agreement is. Players will arrive, as you can imagine, in the late evening or early morning hours and have to refuel, and sometimes we'll have a game right afterwards. And when you're talking about stuff like we usually do about like whatever happened to doubleheaders and how come we don't look at this anymore and stuff like that, this is one of the reasons why, right? Because like you have so many cases in which you have, teams that are traveling long distances between games, and you're trying to make it so that you don't have players who are overly exhausted. As much fun as, double headers are for fans, you can imagine that this could be a real big, issue for the players who are involved. I haven't done a study on doubleheaders, but I'll tell you that I have the feeling that if you look closely at the history of doubleheaders, you will notice that they tend to go away once we get collective bargaining and once the players have a say in kind of how they're treated and how life goes for them. Because for a player, even if you're earning banks, at some point in time, too much is too much. A couple of extras, of course. Nutritional supplementation is always encouraged by the training staff. There's your controversy, right? Players often arrive at hotels with a 7-Eleven style spread set out with nutrition drinks, protein bars, and snacks. Obviously, I think that's more common nowadays than it's ever really been in the past, honestly, because, the things that we know about nutrition and the science behind nutrition has made a lot of advances from where we were in, say, like the 50s. Post-game meals often come from high-end steakhouses or top restaurants, so much for that Angels in the outfield scene. Top players have sweet language in their contracts that provides them with the best rooms. There you have it. From card games on the plane to team dinners on off days, the road is where camaraderie is built. Now, that's a real interesting statement. See, I saw that, and I thought of something else. So we'll go ahead here, and I'll go back here to the camera-only view while I make this change. I as soon as I saw that, I thought about a book that I'd read before that I just so happen to have a copy of here in PDF format. Now let's see if we get this screen right. There you go. I don't know if you can see this clearly or not. That might be a little bit small depending on what kind of device you're on. But this comes from Leonard Kopit's The New Thinking Fan's Guide to Baseball, where he has a whole chapter about this, right? And he talks about how togetherness has been weakened over the years, right? You're part of a team, either directly or more tenuously, but significantly as a rider. You have to realize that Kopit is thinking fondly of the days of the traveling on train, like right, in his case, probably right after World War II. He's actually really sort of pining for the pre-World War II days, but he's too young to remember those. But here you go. When virtually all games were played in the afternoon and all travel was by train, togetherness was fostered automatically. On a train, people mingle in club cars, diners, and Pullman sets, all conducive to conversation and continuing the card games. Trains arrive and leave from midtown locations, near hotels reached by cabs or on a short walk, and so on and so forth. I mean, it's not really that different from the airport, to be honest with you. After a game, there was an evening in which to socialize, go out to dinner, take in a movie, visit friends, prowl bars, whatever, and much lobby traffic going and coming, which I suppose is nice if you're a sports writer and you're trying to catch guys out of their element. We can go on and on with this. I mean, like I said, he has an entire chapter devoted to this. He talks about how air travel is completely isolating as compared to sitting on a train. I'm not so sure that I actually agree with that, right? But then again, I don't know what these charter planes actually look like inside. Who knows? And on it goes here. Anyway, all of this brings up a interesting point. So if you read the Thinking Fan's Guide to Baseball, or the New Thinking Fan's Guide to Baseball, you'll get a feel for Coppett, and you'll realize that he's kind of one of these get off my lawn type of guys, you know, an old guy who just wants to remember how good things were once upon a time, whether that memory is accurate or not. And I would argue, like I just said, that it's probably not fully accurate, right? I mean, I read the book that he wrote, I can't remember the name of it, about the great baseball sports writers, or the history of the sports writing of baseball, or something like that. And I was actually quite disappointed with it, because most of it was about how the Baseball Writers Association of America used to have like these really cool meetings at the end of the year where they would have ball players come out and they would do like skits or give speeches and stuff like that, which is fascinating if you're a sports writer. But if you're just a fan of the sport, you're like, I don't want to read about how you used to, you know, schmooze it up with, you know, the great stars of like the 55 Dodgers or something like that. I mean, it gets to the point where you're like, okay, whatever. Like, could we talk about, you know, something that's actually interesting for people who are fans of baseball? And again, in that book, there's a lot of this attitude that, you know, the game has fallen apart these days. It's nothing like it once was, and blah, 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 and on and on. I don't know if I necessarily want to say that, but what I do want to say is that when you're playing your projects and you're in between games, you got to keep this in mind, especially if teams are traveling. You got to remember that you're going a long way away, and that travel conditions are not all that great. I talked before about the difficulty in playing the 1900 National League, right, where you have these like crazy off days between games, and you're like, why was this the case? There's actually two reasons for it. Number one is barnstorming, which we forget about because we think of it just as exhibition games. But barnstorming was a pretty big thing, especially during the season, and that meant money, and that was the thing that these clubs needed. There's no TV contract, there's no radio contract, there's no advertising contract, there's not even a baseball card contract, 1900. There's nothing. So you got to go out and make it yourself. Nobody's buying your merchandise. You can't make a crappy t-shirt because t-shirts don't exist yet. Nobody's going to buy a ball cap from you, right? It's thought of as a kid's thing, you know, and who cares about the insignia? In fact, as you know, most teams in 1900 didn't have a logo on their cap. They just had this certain style of cap, right? So like, if you're looking as a team to try to make money, you got a barnstorm. But the other problem that you have is that you got to go on the trains of the time to go from city to city. And this can be a problem if you're going from New York to Chicago, right? And you'll see when you look back at schedules, you don't see a lot of like east to west, then back to east right away type schedules. Instead, it would be like the Eastern teams go west, and then they sort of spread out again. Western plays Western, Eastern plays Eastern, then the Western teams come east, and then they mix it up, and then they go back, right? That's the way that it would work, because it works better with the train schedules, and because then you don't have to worry so much about all these crazy logistics. So anyway, there you go. There's my personal rant about the subject. I actually don't think that things are that different today from how they were in the past. So, but be careful when you're dealing with it. I like Leonard Coppett, but sometimes he gets on my nerves. And I'm going to go make sure that this electronic vacuum doesn't run me over. I'll talk to you again tomorrow. Bye-bye.